afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us in this hybrid session of the Tulane Tech Talks. This event is a collaboration between Tulane Talent Development and the Innovation Learning Center. Please note that today's session is being recorded and will be available in TU Learn soon. Now, these Tech Talk series are a series that explores emerging technologies and their impact on how we work, how we learn, and how we do research here at Tulane. Today, we're pleased to welcome Knud Berthelsen, a professor of practice here at Tulane and a local AI expert here in New Orleans. Knud teaches courses in applied AI, data analytics, and the societal impact of AI, and also consults with organizations to help them leverage AI tools effectively. So we got a real expert in the house. Now, in this session, AI, so what's next? Knud will take us beyond the basics to explore practical AI applications and what the future holds for AI here at Tulane and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Knud.
Thank you very much, both in the room and wherever you might be on Zoom. Welcome to my little corner of the Summer Tech series, AI, What's Next? And I'm really trying to tell two different stories here. One is what's next for you. Let's assume that you are someone who's sort of a casual user of AI, right? You use ChatGPT, you chat back and forth, maybe you've uploaded a document or generated a picture or something. So what's next for you? Like, where can you take your AI use next? But I also want to think about what is next for AI, right? So I'm going to go through a variety of relatively new functions and tools and capabilities of AI that we can use, and also discuss where I think they might be heading. So to begin with, the first thing we need to know is that we need to use the right tools. So we have data here from Tulane, for example, showing that for 80% of Tulane students use AI, right? And 20% do not. And it's similar for sort of faculty and staff when we've sort of done similar things there. And basically, everyone uses ChatGPT, all right? Everyone uses ChatGPT, and very few people use any other tools. Now, ChatGPT is a great tool, and sometimes it's even the best tool, but most of the time there's another tool that's better. Now, there are many of these. I'm just going to go through very briefly 3 of them, right? So we got ChatGPT that everyone sort of knows and loves, but there's another tool called Claude. So Claude, made by a company called Anthropic, is similar to ChatGPT. It's just sort of, it's my daily driver. It's what most of the people who use AI a lot, especially people who do any kind of coding, end up having as their favorite, right? And it generally does everything that ChatGPT does, just slightly better. It's known for being a very sort of eloquent writer. You don't have the problem that whatever output just looks like ChatGPT works. Like, it will not delve into something, for example, right? And it has a couple of other things that were some functions that I'll describe in more detail later, but that are unique to it. And historically, it has had a larger context window than ChatGPT, meaning it can keep more thoughts in its head at the same time, if you will, right? The next one is Gemini. So Gemini is by Google, right? And before we even had ChatGPT, Google was behind some of the sort of the papers that became the AI revolution that we're now in. But with the launch of ChatGPT, they kind of looked silly because they were this huge company and this small startup had just rushed past them. And if you remember, the first sort of public-facing AI models from Google were pretty pathetic, right? There was Palm, there was Bard, early Gemini, Gemini 1, not very impressive. You can forget all of that stuff. Now, Google has completely caught up and in many ways passed the competition. The Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is sort of the current model there, is by far one of the top models. They're generally, they're integrating it into a whole lot of other Google tools, as you would expect that they would do. And they've created a standalone product called NotebookLM. You can get it at notebooklm.google.com. which is powered by Gemini. So Gemini is their brain, if you will, the LLM. And it does things that is just unique. None of the other tools can do that. Specifically, you could put up to 300 sources, sort of documents or recordings, whatever you want in there. Each one of these sources can be up to 2,000 pages long if they're text, or 200 megabyte if it's, for example, an audio recording. And this sort of research assistant tool, that I think is the best definition of it, will sort of keep track of all this information, and you can discuss that with it. It can visualize it for you. It can create little podcasts discussing it with you. There's really no end to what you can do. It's an amazing tool that no one should sleep on. And then it can do things that you could absolutely not do with ChatGPT. You could not give ChatGPT, 50 documents, or even a single document that's 2,000 pages long, right? So those are the two big ones when it comes to like this. These are different AI models, right? They're separate. But there's one more tool. It's called Perplexity. Perplexity is not actually an AI model. It is an AI tool. Specifically, it's a search engine. So it's not so much that saying you should use Perplexity instead of ChatGPT, although if what you're trying to do is mostly search specific, you should. You should use Perplexity instead of Google search. Right? It has completely replaced, I do not search anything on Google anymore because Perplexity is so much better, right? And it's just set up to be a search tool. You tell it what you want using natural language instead of just keywords. It translates, if you will, this into multiple search queries that it will do for you. It will then read the sources and then give you a reply. And this is only the beginning of a conversation, right? So unlike with a Google search, if whatever it gives you is not quite what you want, or it makes you inspired to find out even more, all you have to do is say that, and it will continue. And it has in its context, it knows what it already did. So unlike, for example, an old school Google search, you change your keywords and you press search again, and this is like a new instance that does not know the last one, right? So just sort of briefly, these are tools that absolutely everyone should be using. Claude, there's a free version that's okay. It's $20 for not. Gemini, and this is important, anyone with a .edu email address, you have until June 30 to take advantage of an offer that they're doing for students, which is a full year of free Gemini Pro. All right, so you search for, Gemini Pro student offer, whatever it is. It will prompt you to enter your .edu email. It will send you a code, and then you'll use that because this will be associated not with that account, but with your Gmail account, right? But you get a year free of Pro, and it's a fantastic deal. So you should take that one. Perplexity, similar. I think currently there's a deal of 1 free month of Pro, which is their sort of $20 one. But the free one there includes every day, I think 3 to 5 searches or events like that are using the higher models, if you will. So you don't have to rush out and start paying for that one. It's a really good tool for free as well, right? But it's not just enough to use the right tools. You also have to use the right models. And the companies have not made this easy for us, right? All these tools, I mean, the models have such confusing names. They're so bad that you cannot imagine that there's intelligence behind it, all right? So, for example, with Claude, which is, they're generally better in so many things, and I can see what they were trying to do, but they launched, with Claude 3 originally, they launched a model family with Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. Right? So if you know about literature and music and you think about things, you'd be like, okay, haiku is small, sonnet is middle, and opus is bigger, right? But then confusingly, for a long time, they didn't keep working on opus, so it was sonnet that was better and it had a higher number. So anyway, it's very confusing. The big confusion right now is that I think a majority of casual ChatGPT users actually think that 4.0 is a better model than 0.3 because it's 4 instead of 3. Right? But it's not, right? These are completely different. So very short version, when you use ChatGPT, which I do think you should pay for to get access to use these, right? You should use the model called O3. It is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the top 3 models when it comes to just intelligence and what it can do for you. Same with Google, better on the naming conventions. They have Pro and Flash, right? So Pro is the smartest, biggest model, and Flash is the faster model, right? So for most of these things, the trade-off is between sort of quality and speed. And I mean, I'm a fast reader, but all of these can write faster than I can read. So I do not care how much faster, right? So I would always choose quality over speed when it comes to choice of model, because at the end of the day, there's no way I'm going to read that fast anyway, right? Same now, recently updated from from Claude, Opus 4, right? So then now 4, there's Opus and there's Sonnets. They forgot about Haiku this time. Opus is not as fast as Sonnet, but it is even smarter, right? So a little bit about where this is going, right? So these are all amazing tools, and there are others, and you could use others, but you don't need to. But this might change, right? So there are some other companies out there that are just right behind, and their next model could be better, right? And they all have this sort of architecture ready. So one of them is Grok by xAI, or Elon Musk, right? They are currently at Grok 3, which is almost as good as these. But a year ago, they didn't have any models, right? I mean, they're so fast. They just built this giant data center and started from scratch and came out with a model that's almost as good. So the expected very soon Grok 3.5 might, for all we know, be better. And if it is, they do have an interface where you can upload documents. They can do all the things that the other things can do. They're ready for that, right? Then there's a European one called Mistral from France. They have recently added all the bells and whistles of all the others, and their model is good. Their strongest model is very good, and they're also famous for their smaller models that you can use locally, but that's sort of a different story. But they too could come out with a new model that could be smarter than these, and everything would be ready for you to start using them. Similarly, Meta, company behind Facebook, there's nothing wrong with their models, and they're certainly putting enough money behind them and enough hardware. They're currently training one that's called Mastodon. It's supposed to be the largest of them all. Their last one that came out was a bit of a disappointment, but there's no reason why this other one shouldn't be at least as good, if not better. And the only thing is, so far, they've mostly integrated all their AI stuff in like WhatsApp and Messenger and that kind of stuff, instead of giving us like a useful tool for those of us who use it for work. But there's nothing stopping them from doing that, and they've made it clear that they are planning on doing that. So all these things can change, right? Now, O3, all this sort of word salad from ChatGPT, Sam Altman, the CEO there, has made it very clear that this will end. There will be a ChatGPT 5 to rule them all, and when that comes out, it will be the one, and you don't have to deal with all like which one is smarter. Current estimate is that we're getting ChatGPT 5 in July, right? So that's not very far from now. We know every time Google rolls out something new, we're all like, wow, and then 3 weeks later, it's like, oh, by the way, here's something even better. So, 2.5 Pro is fairly recent, but no reason why we can't get 3. Early fall at least, I'd say. And same with Opus. So last time a year ago when Claude 3 was announced, it only took a few weeks until we got 3.5. So if we're gonna get Opus 4 point some number, it wouldn't surprise me at all either, right? So sort of like keeping track of this is, it's a bit of a full-time job at this point, but it is important because they are so much better. We are reaching the point where some of them, for example, there's a new one now called O3 Pro that you have to pay $200 a month, ChatGPT 4. It is proven to be better than O3, but only for things that are so complex that none of us actually use it, right? So we don't always sort of have to go completely overboard, but generally, I recommend always using whatever the strongest model you have access to is. Okay, next, personalization. So it used to be that there was no such thing, right? Remember early ChatGPT? You were like, hello, I do this, I'm trying to do this. Like, it didn't know anything about you, right? And then now, hopefully, most of you have followed my best principles to do some personalization, and you have given ChatGPT some information about who you are, where you live, what you work, what you're interested in, how you like their answers to be and not to be, and all that. So personalization, you're giving it more context, right? You can now do that with basically all of these tools. All of these tools have some way. Gemini is the one that currently does not, but it has something else. It has like, you can choose if you will allow it to personalize based on your search history from Google, all right? Which is very useful, right? On ChatGPT now, they have this whole memory thing where you, in addition to telling it things, you can allow it to save memories about you from one chat to another, and for it to draw on information from every chat you've ever done when it's thinking about how it can help you, right? So you either love that or hate that. I'm sort of in the latter because I use ChatGPT and all these other tools for so many different things, some for me, some for classes, some for demonstrations, some for clients. It's like, there's so many things that have nothing to do with each other, but I can see that if you are, apparently what I'm saying, like if you are a student and you basically got your ChatGPT account roughly when you started studying and you mostly use it for things having to do with, well, studying, career, and your life, you love that it knows everything about you, right? Because you don't have to repeat yourself. And even it will remember things you forgot, right? So you could do all this sort of personalization, and generally what you're doing is that you're giving the models, the AI tools, context about yourself that enable them to do better, right? Just same as going to a doctor that actually knows you because they've treated you forever and actually read your file is better than going to a random doctor that doesn't have your files, right? So that's personalization. And obviously more and more of this, right? The next one is called projects, right? So all of them have something like that now. ChatGPT calls it custom, or they have projects and custom GPTs. Everywhere else, it's called a project, except Perplexity calls it a space. But the point is, it's like a little AI within the AI that you give it specific knowledge, only specific to what you're trying to do, and then it's mostly cut off from the rest. So for example, for each course that I teach, I will have a project and I will give that project the syllabus for the course, all my information about the course. I will give it the Zoom summaries from the class meetings and stuff like that. And when I go into that, it knows that the context is that I'm the guy who teaches this course, and that's what we're talking about. So it will do a much better job than if I'm just sort of using the general things. And it's sort of keeping, to some degree, watertight compartments of things, and it makes things incredibly useful, especially, and I assume most people, you have something that is repetitive, something that you do quite often, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. And if you do this, set up a project for it, now you can keep doing this, right, without having to start from scratch every time. So it's very useful, and generally, all these AI tools more and more are coming up with ways of doing this. And my expectation is that relatively soon, they will be able to review your whole history with them and suggest how to organize it into projects and do that for you. Because at this point, if you're me, you have so many thousands of conversations like there, I can't even go back there, right? But that's an easy task for an AI to organize your stuff into meaningful ways and then, again, be even more helpful for you, right? Deep research is next, right? So until the fall, it's just crazy, it's only been the fall, like October, I think maybe it was, the only way we could use AI was sort of a turn-based conversation, right? You go to ChatGPT, you say, you know, help me learn more about this thing, and it'll say, okay, sure, here's some things I know, and let me go out and find some websites, and here's some more, right? And then you're like, oh, thank you, how about a little bit more about this, right? But it's a turn-based back and forth, right? With the launch in, I think, October of the original Google Gemini deep research, and now everyone, all these tools have a deep research or a research function. We've found there's the first part of what's called agentic behavior, right? So what you do when I call it commission, when I commission a deep research report from a tool, basically what I'm thinking of it is like I'm hiring a fantastic researcher, and I say like, I need a report that will teach me about this thing or bring me up to date about this or whatever it is, and then it will go out and literally read hundreds of papers and articles and websites, right? And the way that they've now gotten to the point where they can do this in sort of a multi-turn things, and you can follow their thinking as they do it, which is fascinating. And I actually learned a lot from that too. So you say, well, we did something the other day in one of my classes. I said, I commissioned deep research reports on the impact of the current Trump administration sort of war on international students on US higher education institutions in general and Tulane especially, right? And then I had 5 or 6 different tools that in a span from 3 to 12 minutes returned with multi-page reports, right? So Claude, for example, had 411 sources. And it wrote about, what was it, 6-page report with like inline citations to each one of these, right? ChatGPT gave me a 27-page report from 100 and something, right? So this is sort of like, it's next level. It gives you a full briefing paper or whatever it is, right? And you can, some of the other things obviously you can think about, you can combine this with some of these other tools. For example, the ability to schedule a recurring thing, right? Like, I need a weekly report on this, right? And if you haven't tried it, you really absolutely need to, right? So Gemini does wonderful with this, especially if you have the pro version, so you can do many of them. Perplexity does it. What I like about Perplexity is that you can actually give it a little bit more guidelines. You can tell it to either just look at everything, or you can specify that you want it to only look at academic sources, only social media, only SEC filings, right? Or everything. You can sort of turn these off and on, and you will find out a lot of incredibly useful things. And Perplexity is also where I sort of see where I think this is going. Perplexity has now added another function that's not just deep research, but it's called a project, of course, project, because they use the same word for everything. This one does not just write a report, it basically generates a dashboard, for example. Like it's some interactive, it writes and runs some sort of a code, and you could revisit this. Same as with Gemini Deep Research now, when you get the report, there's a little button where you can say a couple of options. One is exports to Google Docs. Now you have it in a Google Doc, and you can edit it, right? And save it as a PDF or print, whatever you want. Two is you can give me an audio overview. So now a few minutes later, you will hear two human-sounding voices discussing this content, all right? Three, make it into a website. It will make it into a website. You can share it with others. And then four is you can have it do visualize data, like make graphs and fun stuff like that out of whatever it finds in there for you. And so generally more and more of these things are added, and I am expecting pretty soon that you can, any format you can think of, right? You say, go out, research a bunch of stuff, and give me a whatever this thing is that doesn't have to be a report, right? And it can do that for you. And it is absolutely crazy what it can do. And some of this is like PhD level stuff. I mean, it's crazy stuff. A small but important thing happened in December during the 12 days of ChatGPT or whatever it was, that they released something called scheduled tasks, which was just very basic time-based sort of cron jobs, if you will, where you can say, for example, one of mine, every morning at 8, give me an update on any important new AI launches since yesterday, specifically new models, new tools from the important companies, stuff like that. So every morning at 8, it goes out, it searches for stuff, it knows what I'm interested in and what I'm not, and it gives me a little report on that, right? So they've had this since December, but actually this is all starting like last week, everyone's starting to get it. So it's rolling out now for Gemini, for Perplexity, and then as of today for Grok. Right? So more and more of these things, you can think like, not only can I go to an AI tool and have it do a thing for me, but I can set it up to just always do it for me and just let me know when it's done. Right? So again, very useful. And you can now think, if you combine these with some of these other tools, right, you can get a regularly scheduled deep research report on something. You can have a regularly scheduled go into this spreadsheet and look at what's I've added and give me a report, right? You can have, like, at the end of each month, go through my email inbox, find every email that seems to be a receipt, and add them as lines in the spreadsheet. I mean, there's so many things you can have if you set this up to be scheduled, all right? One more thing we need to talk about is what's called, everywhere except Claude, it's called a canvas. But since Claude was first with this, and they called it an artifact, I use that too. So when you chat, right, you know the chat interface. There's like message, next message, like above each other, right? And typically what we've been doing when we use AI is we talk about something, it replies, and everything lives sort of in the chat log, if you will, right? But when you use a canvas or an artifact, what happens is that your screen splits and you get a document on the side, and you have your AIs working for you in this document, which is so much more useful quite often. There can be multiple documents. You can share the documents. You can save the document as a PDF. If you use Claude's projects, you can add the document to the project knowledge, right? So there's so many things you can do in that document, right? Where you can write you can edit it. ChatGPT Canvas, like if you're not, whatever in there, you can then just click in and edit and add things and remove things the way you want, or highlight a little part of it, said like, this part, give me a couple of more versions of this one. Oh, good, that one, right? So again, you're not just having a conversation with someone, they're working for you in a document that is shared with you. And not only can these be documents like a Word document, they can really be anything because they can write and run code in there, right? So some of you might have tried this with ChatGPT. It's called Code Interpreter when it first came out there. And it's the ability for an AI to write and run typically Python code, right? Which is very useful if you wanted to do any data analysis, for example, right? But you can do these things, write the code, run the code, check the outputs, help you with this. If you are so inclined, you can then copy the code to run it somewhere else if you know anywhere you can do that, right? Like for example, like a Google Colab notebook or something like that would be an example of that. But more and more now, it's not just that it can run sort of analysis, or that it can give you something like, let's say in a HTML format instead of just Word documents, so it can have more bells and whistles. I often have it make games. It can make quick games, just either for fun or to help you learn, right? So in my class on the impact of AI on government, I had it make like a little sort of city simulator where the students had to make decisions on whether or not they should invest more in this or that, or sort of legislate strongly or weakly on these things. And then, so they had to make decisions in this game to just help them understand what the potential impacts of AI could be on running a city, right? So you can do this, but not only can you do that, if you are actually the kind of person who codes, which I'm not, but let's say you're a software developer, everyone now uses AI for that. And you'll note in some of these tools that they're like little things you can connect, for example, Google Drive and Box or something, but you can also almost always, I think always for all of them now, you can connect to something called GitHub, right? GitHub is a repository for code where anyone who actually does coding, again, I do not, is where they keep their code, and you can copy it and all the other stuff. So now if you want to work with code and you want to say Claude, so Claude is the #1 choice for coders for stuff like that. You say, hey, Code, I have this, hey, Claude, I have this code. Can you find out why it's not working? And then you just give it that connection, and it will go in, find the code, find the error, say what it is, and fix it for you, for example, right? Or you can like have it write it all from scratch, for that matter, right? So that's one way you can use it. But what most, I guess, sort of professional software developer uses sort of a third-party tool, specifically one called Cursor. So with Cursor, you do all your coding there as you sort of would if you know how to do it, but you have multiple AI models connected in there that will sort of do things for you. But it's one of those cases where like it is integrated into this instead of you having to take it to it, right? This has gotten to the point where someone coined the term vibe coding earlier this year only. It feels like a while ago. So basically, vibe coding is when these tools are now so good that you can code without even looking at the code. You just say, hey, make me a game that does this. And then it does. And if something's not working, you don't look at the code to find out. You'd be like, hey, why is this not working? Make that work. And then it makes that work. It's like, ooh, hey, what should we add now? Like, let's add a different background. And like, let's put some bells and whistles in here. Can we connect it with this? Right? And these, so including people who cannot code, but especially those who actually can, they can sort of in hours create something that otherwise would have been weeks or more by teams of multiple people. Right? Just because these things, these AI tools can just write thousands and thousands of lines of perfect code, right, in minutes instead. And basically what's happening now is that anything that could be software will be software, right? So we're used to that software is something that someone had to develop, and for that to happen, there had to be a market. There had to be enough people that could use it. But now we're entering the age of bespoke software, right? You can have a software that only works for you, and that is made around exactly the tools that you use, the job you have, the data you have, the skills you have, your preferences, and it's just for you. And whenever you want, you can just have it write a new one. I mean, it's at this point, it's sort of absurd that sometimes it's faster for me to have it write a new program than for me to remember where I stored the old one, right? So it's completely different thinking than we're used to. Okay, next. So what you can do as well is integration. And there's more and more of this too. So let's talk about a couple of them. One is Google. They're very, unsurprisingly, very good at this. So if you have the page Gemini Pro, you will start noticing a little star up in the generally in the right corner of any Google thing you use, right? So if I'm in Google Docs, which I use instead of Word, I can press that little star and it immediately gives me a summary of the document and asks how it can help me. And I can ask it to like, can you rewrite this part? Can you give me a summary of this? Like whatever I want. But the different, I can do anything that I could do if I took the document to ChatGPT, for example, but I don't have to take it anywhere. It is there, right? And if I have it write something new for me, there's just a little button with an arrow on. I can click that, and now it goes into the document as well, right? So it's integrated that way, right? And it's the same way with my Gmail, with my Google Drive, I mean, all these other things, you have that little thing. Most recently now, I have it for Chrome, for the browser. So there's a little star on top right on my browser, and I click that, and then it will read the entire website, whatever it is that I'm on, and I can now discuss that. I can say just basic things like summarize this incredibly long article for me, right? But whatever it is that I want, it immediately has that context that this website is where it is, and whatever I do in this little pop-up window, I can then send on to like big Gemini, if you will, and onto a Google Docs or whatever it is that I want to do. So they're connecting that, right? Another one that's getting good at this, slowly but surely, we haven't talked about them yet, is Microsoft, right? Not so much the Microsoft we get to use, right? That's sort of approved and you know, for business and all that stuff, but for the personal stuff, at least, right? So they now, Copilot, the one that's for consumers, not companies, is getting better and better and more integrated. They have their Edge browser, which of course no one uses, but it has all the same things integrated. It can see whatever you see. There's a button there where you can share your screen with it and a microphone, so that basically it sees a live stream of what you see, and you talk to it, and you can ask it about things, and it can help you. So Google has the same thing that you can use for AI Studio, and they're getting it. I showed someone on my phone earlier, right? So very easy. Okay, so let's say I opened like Photoshop Express or whatever it was. I wanted to edit a photo. I can't remember how to do that anymore. I was never that good at it. So I'm sharing the screen, and it's just literally walking me through it. Go to, like I say, this is what I want to do. And it's like, oh yeah, you need to add a layer. Or like, you got to go to this menu. I was like, oh, this one? Yes, that one. Okay, click here. Okay, now which one? That one there. Okay, oh, good. And then what happens there? Well, you can see now that this has changed, right? So now you have a live sort of video tutor, if you will, who sees what you see, right? And this is just going to get more and more. So I have opted into what's called recall. So on my computer, my personal computer now, anything I do in Windows is seen by the Microsoft AI. They take a screenshot of every single screen, unless I'm in an incognito window or there's banking details, so there's some sort of obvious things where they just knows not to, right? And they have now this long sort of string of record of everything in the, I don't remember how many weeks I've tested this out. And then I can go in. Currently, the only thing I could do is it can help me recall something. I can be like, what was that thing I did? Like, what was the site that I read something about this again? It's actually kind of useful for me. It's like, hey, there was that article. I can't remember where it was, but it was, you know, this guy wrote it. No, but it was like, I can't remember, right? It will help me with stuff like that. But it's pretty basic still, like sort of like keyword search based, right? But you can see how these things are going to generally become more and more proactive, right? Every now and then, you probably have this too. Every now and then, it's 5 o'clock, and I'm like, what did I actually do today, right? And I would be fantastic. You know, I just want to be like, what did I actually do today? And it'd be like, this is what you did today. And it will have like all these things, right? For some of us, it might also be helpful to be like, you spent a little much time on Twitter today and not quite as much in Outlook. So maybe tomorrow, should we set a little limit for you tomorrow? I was like, yeah, sure, I'd like that, right? Which I won't like when it comes to it, but yeah. But you can see how it can sort of by integrating AI into whatever it is you're doing instead of going to the AI, it will change your workflow for that. Next step, something called connectors. It's technically called Model Context Protocol, MCP. It was developed by Anthropic, the Claude company, and incredibly enough, the other companies decided to adopt it, which was really fantastic. We now have a standard. So this is what it is. It is a standard for connecting any AI tool with any other tool. All right. There are different ways. Currently, it's not like very well integrated in most of the sort of consumer-facing versions of AI. So it's more like backend and API tools. But for Claude now, if you have the paid version of Claude, you can add what they call MCP servers, and then can connect to things. So the example I give, and I did this sort of a live demo for a class recently of this. So in my Claude, I have connected it to my Google Drive, Google Calendar, and Gmail, which I, by the way, can turn on, and there's a little slider on and off for each chat if I want it, because most of the time I don't, right? But for this, I was like, okay, turn it on. And I also connected it to Asana, right? The task management tool that I wish I used more, right? And then I literally said, I said, look, I have Asana. I'm terrible, like, because I set things up and then I forget about it. And then I feel like it's such a drag to create tasks for myself. But it's kind of fun to complete them and to see what I did. So how can you help me here? Right? And it was like, oh, I can do all these things, right? And I was like, okay, well, actually, and this was just a few weeks. It's like, it was June, and the only thing I'm really doing right now is I'm teaching like a summer course on Data 2150 AI tools. Can you find my syllabus for this and create and find my Data 2150 project in Asana and create tasks for the rest of the month? And it did. It went in the syllabus, it's like, because I can see it's thinking, it's like, oh, here's the syllabus, okay, and then like, oh, here's the schedule, okay, I see every day is a class meeting of a different module, and then it created a task one day before each one of these, prepare module 8, prepare module 9, right? And then I didn't even notice it later, it actually populated the description, which I never do, with something about what I should put in there and all that. And then I noticed a couple of tasks that were like, wait, this is a great task, but that was not in the syllabus, right? And then I looked further up, and it said when it searched for Data 2150 Summer, it found the syllabus, but it found 4 documents, and one of the other documents was called Data 2150 Summer Zoom summaries. So it read that one too, and it's a summary of my class meeting. And in one of the class meetings, I had told my students to set up a thing, to set up like a recurring task with Google, no, with ChatGPT that I would check on them. I'll check on you next week to see how you guys are doing. And well, lo and behold, there's a task next Tuesday. Check on students' ChatGPT tasks. And I'm like, this is fantastic, right? And so since I've used it a little bit more, so now basically I can go after a class meeting when I've updated this document with a summary, I'll have it just update. So it will mark complete the tasks that it can see that I've done, and then it will add new tasks. And even when I made a change to the schedule of for the last week, I moved a couple of things around, and then I said, please update, and it did. So now it updated which classes I had to prepare for which day and all that. So these are incredibly useful ways when you give permission, and that's the key here is that we are at danger of sort of losing control of our context, if you will, right? Especially with ChatGPT, I'm really worried that quite often I do not know how much it knows. Quite often I'm like, wait, what are you looking at here, right? And sometimes, at least for me, I need to narrow that down, right? So same as I can be like distracted and see squirrels, AI can too. And I'm like, no, none of this, only this, right? Because otherwise you will overthink and make things more complicated. And so it's really important to have like ways of figuring out this. But generally what I see coming here is just, I mean, everything will be able to connect to everything with some initial setup that we want. And I can tell you one of the other things I've set up a connector to is something called Zapier, right? So if you're familiar with Zapier, so you have Zapier, Make.com, and Microsoft Power Automate, right? These are what sort of no-code automation tools. right? So you can connect, for example, Zapier with any app that you have, right? And then you can set up sort of if this, then that things. Like if I did this for a client, when an email is moved into the folder in Outlook that's called receipts, then that email will be sent to an AI that will look at the email, and if that email has a PDF attachment that is a receipt, it will save that attachment to a folder. If it does not, it will create a PDF of the email body and save that to the same folder. Either way, the file name will be date vendor, I can't remember, something like that. So at the end of each month, this client, when he does, needs to get his refunds for things and do his bookkeeping, he has in his folder every single receipt for anything he paid with. Oh, it says which card it was on, right? Last 4 digits, right? He now has a folder sorted by date that includes the name, like everything that he needs to just do this without going back and forth and looking in emails and find, oh no, this is the PDF and all that. And he could sort of put all this stuff into one, like obviously checking it and sending in one email to whoever does that stuff, right? So these connectors, you can think of anything you can think of that you cannot currently do, pretty sure very soon you can. Some of the things you can already, you just haven't figured it out yet. But generally for all my AI things, anything that I tried to do about a year ago and I couldn't, it can do now, right? I'm very rarely disappointed at these things. Oh yeah, so I sort of forgot to skip, but this is automations, right? So it's more of these things. You can automate things so that a trigger that is not just a time, but when something happens, then these other things happen and they're connected, and there's an intelligence sort of lording over it, if you will, to avoid like stupid automations just sort of getting stuck and repeating the same thing that you don't need. Right. Keep going one more step, right? This things get more and more complicated, more and more sort of engaged, if you will. The next one is something called operators. Right? So ChatGPT has something that's literally called operator, but you only get it if you do the $200 a month version of ChatGPT currently, right? And what it does is that you give it a task, whatever it is, and it will take over a browser and it will go do things as you, right? So it can go to multiple websites, it can copy, paste, it can do all these things. And because it's as you with a browser that is you can log into things that you have access to that it doesn't have access to, right? And it can go and like do repetitive tasks for you and stuff like this, right? Now, Claude, they have one that does you one better. It's not just a browser, it's a computer. So it can control either a virtual computer, or if you're feeling really adventurous, your actual computer for you. And if you think about everything we do on computers, right, there's mouse, movement, and click, right? Move mouse, click. And then there's a read or interpret image, and then it's write. And that's basically it, right? These can do all that. Of course they can do all that. And you're getting more and more of these. Google has one, I think it's called Codename Project Astra or something. I mean, all of them are working on something similar, right? Where you just give it access to do things for you instead of just gathering information, right? So it's great if I'm going to Turkey, maybe, I don't know, let's say I'm going to Turkey, and it's great that I can commission a deep research report like, hey, I'm going to Turkey, when should I go, how should I fly, where should I stay, what should I see, right? That's awesome, but it's even more awesome if I'm like, oh, great, book that. I mean, why not? There's no technical limitations for it to be able to just like book that. And if it has access to my browser in which I have saved my credit cards, it can go out and do that, right? So I think like the case they showed when they demoed this the first time was they had a meeting and they told Claude operator, like, we have 6 people here for a meeting at 6, we need some pizza. And then it went and found local pizza places, placed the order, paid for the order, and the pizza arrived, right? Because again, it's not rocket science, right? If it just has the right permissions and it knows how to do things, and it has, and I have to say, all AI tools at this point have lower error rates than humans. I mean, we keep talking about, oh, every now and then they say something that's not right. It's like, I don't know, every now and then I say something that's not right, much more often, right? I mean, when making these these slides, right? I use Imagine 4 by Google through a tool called Whisk. And basically all of them are like the prompt is, like ancient style mosaic that includes this word and ideally somehow illustrates it. And through all I did 40 or something. Don't worry, there are only 20 slides. We're almost done. I did 40, and there was one that had like a mild typo in it. It's actually the first one. The E in Berthelsen does not have the middle thing. However, I had 2 typos that it corrected without telling me, that I found later, that I'd copied and pasted a word that I was wrong, but it got it right. So it's not just me, I hope. We are generally, we make mistakes, they make mistakes. The best ones, when used the right way, make much less of a mistake than those. The thing is, most of the time when humans make a mistake, we kind of instantly spot it because something's sort of just off, and they're just so damn convincing in their mistakes, right? They're just packaged beautifully and so it's like possible, except no, absolutely not, right? So whenever you have like someone says like, this person wrote these 5 books and the person only wrote 4, that 5th book would be a perfect book for that person, right? It's not like blah, blah, blah. It's like one that fits into everything that is known of that person. If you're that person, you'd be like, I should write that book, right? Okay, so that's operators. And now we're really getting there because here at the final stop, we're moving towards this agentic AI where basically we have agents, right? Not just tools, not just automations, not just scheduled tasks, but agents that work for you, that have sort of a mandate. They know what it is that you want in the end, and you don't have to tell them to do things, and they're not waiting for you to ask them for things. They're just out there churning, doing things to benefit you, right? And I'm more and more of these things, I think they'll be, they'll work at night when power prices are low and usage of actual human AI is low, right? And just like go through everything you did the day before and say like, how can we help Knud for tomorrow, right? I will look forward then to your calendar and your emails and things and be like, man, he really is behind on this thing. He should probably work on that. So I'm gonna have, tomorrow morning when he asks me what he should be doing today, I'm gonna say like, you should probably do this first, right? And there are multiple such agents that can work for you. So that leads us to the end here. What is the future? Where are we going with all this thing, right? And I think that what's going to happen is we will all have our own personal AI, one or several, that we will interact with directly, and then we will not interact with any other AI because they will do it for us, right? So I will have something that knows everything there is to know about me that I wanted to know, and that understands me, and that I can communicate through by talking to it, by writing to it, by showing it things, and probably relatively soon by just thinking, whether through a Neuralink or something, right? And then it will deal with all the other things, right? So it's not like, oh no, it would be great if my AI could call Entergy to let them know that I'd like my power back. It's like, no, there's no calling needed, right? Like my AI will connect directly with Entergy and hopefully spam them until they come and turn my power on, right? Or fix it. That's going to take a while, probably, right? So yeah, that's sort of what I'm seeing here, sort of as the future, whether we want it or not. That we will all sort of have a personal AI that helps us engage with other things, hopefully leaving us more room to just personally engage with other humans that we sort of enjoy being with. And with that, I'm ready for questions for whatever time we might have. Thank you.
Go to the Zoom chats from you. There was a question